Welcome to Koffee Talks, a Pokemon card collecting podcast, featuring David Person, owner of the world's most complete English Pokemon card collection, and Dan Norton, a longtime collector with all the knowledge behind the cards.
Hey everyone, welcome back. Welcome to another Koffee Talks. I'm back here with David. Just me and David again this week. So David, how has your week been since we last talked?
You know, Dan, thank you for asking. You always do that every beginning of every podcast, and it's really sweet, but I don't want to talk about that right now. Dan, I want to talk about why do we not have a guest on, okay? Because the whole point is when we have a guest on, like we had Alex Nostalgianomics last time, we get 3 or 4 times the viewers when it's just you and me. And I don't know what's wrong with us. I don't know why nobody wants to watch us. Nobody cares about what we have to say. I'm starting to think we're not hyper enough. We don't like Alex is just hyper and he talks like this all the time. And he's got a lot to say and everybody wants to be interested. He's got a really high-pitched voice. And Dan, nobody cares. And then the thing I heard, Dan, is that somebody said, maybe it was like John Stibbich one time said, hey, he had some guy on that was like, I don't know his name. It's, I think, Cool Trainer Ryan. And he said that was like his biggest video because the guy cussed a lot. Should I I need to cuss more, Dan. And I know you're worried about being banned, but we got to really put this out there. We're not doing something right. What if we just go into the situation and we become other guests? Like I can become a guest, every podcast, but this isn't working at all. Either we're not hyper, we're not cussing enough. Our content is horrible. Nobody will listen to us, Dan.
People are watching and are hoping obviously this is our first video back since we had Alex on the podcast. So hopefully some of his viewers have came over, watched the podcast with him, and hopefully they're going to stick around. So fingers crossed on that we get a few more viewers this week. Some of Alex's viewers have decided to stick with us.
I wouldn't do fingers crossed, buddy. I would do body crossed, legs crossed, prayers crossed. I would go the whole way in on this thing because I am begging the public to watch this. Nobody cares. Dan, before you tell me about anything you want to talk about, I know it was Laura's birthday last night. You took her out for sushi. That was nice of you. Don't forget her because, as we're going to talk about later, she is your sugar mama. But I do want to say, because we just covered it very briefly in the beginning of the Nostalgianomics video, and it's the case that nobody may have watched that video from the standpoint of wanting to see us because it wasn't us. So it wasn't our podcast regular viewers. So I do want to say I did give the sell one of the pre-release Raichus in a transaction with Rusty. And I'm really excited that he had it. And I just want to, for those who might not have realized that or whatever. So Uncle Dave is down to 1 at this point. What was interesting is I watched Rusty do a video on it. And I started to have a little bit of a kind of a palpitation in my heart because he said, gosh, I'm so happy I got this one. There were 2. One was 5.5 grade. One was an 8 grade. I'm just talking about the grades as a way of identifying them. Yeah. But the 5.5 was the one that had all the storied history and provenance coming all the way back through from 1999. And it was the one that was sold by Boozer through Patricia that ended up winning, et cetera. You can watch one of our videos on the provenance of the pre-release Raichus. I don't know, maybe either 19 or 33. Pick one. Dan will tell you what it is in the video. But the thing was, so I'm thinking, gosh, like he's like, I'm so happy I got this one. And he's like, and I'm thinking to myself, it's basically saying David was a dummy to sell me this one. But they don't mean like I really felt that way. But then I sort of thought to myself, well, I have good provenance for both of them. I know where they both came from just because one didn't surface until 2017. And it wasn't any different to me for how it was. They're both kind of the same because I own both of them. But it was interesting, that I wonder as we get into the future of the hobby and grading companies, as we know, have struggled with grading and provenance and all the issues that we have on people's belief in them, does provenance become more substantial? And I think that I'm going to mess up his name. You're going to fix this for me later, but it's Pop Pokemon or it's Pop Pokemon, whatever. Dan, Mike, you'll get that when we get in the comments. But he said to me, or he said in the comments to us, hey, I've got all my boxes straight from TPCI because he's been involved with the company for 100 years as a judge and stuff. Yeah. And he goes, so, the provenance is there. And is it going to be the case that we're going to need to know provenance on every single box at some point in the future because of all the resealing and things that are going on? So anyways, that was my long-winded beginning to our video.
Yeah, well, I think you and Rusty both have said it worked out nicely. I think Rusty said this in his video. Each of you ended up with the one you wanted. Yeah. Which is really nice because you always want the better condition card. And he wanted the one that had more of the story to it. because it was like you said, it was the one that was tracked all this way. That was the pre-release Raichu that was shown on Pokegym. So that's what's more important to him, is that cool story factor, and what's more important to you is condition. So it worked out really well for the both of you.
Yeah,
I know that
and
a lot of people have been asking about the price. I know that Rusty said he doesn't want to reveal the price because he kind of said he didn't want to taint the market in case one ever goes to auction. Basically, he doesn't want to have the price of this possibly influence that. He'd really like to see how a card like that would fare in just an open auction. So I guess the price is going to stay secret for now, at least.
Yeah, and I wouldn't ever divulge it. We didn't discuss divulging it or not, but I just think it's not appropriate. A lot of these transactions don't have to be divulged specifically when there's a party to party involvement, so that can remain confidential. And because he bought it, in my opinion, it should be up to him to be able to talk about it. So I agree completely. Yeah. But that was exciting news, and all of the feedback we got was so happy that he was the one that was able to ultimately own it, and I was really glad too. Of course, I had a choice, in fact, to put it up at auction or something, but I was really happy knowing that he was interested in just going that direction. So,
yeah, you definitely. I think an auction of that would potentially open the floodgates to people trolling auctions and load of just extra comments and extra issues you don't want to have to deal with when you have someone who's so passionate about it, someone who's making a very fair offer. You might as well just go that route and save both of you some hassle.
Yeah, absolutely. Dan, I'm gonna the pace of this video is gonna be fast, Dan, because I'm done with everybody not thinking that we can do it like everybody else. So we're gonna hype her up. I just woke up, I showered, and I'm ready to go. And but do you want to say anything before I just roll over you completely in this video?
Well, I'm going to talk very, very briefly about the EB Games promos I've been trying to deal with this week. Because, as we've mentioned in a couple of videos, we're both tracking down EB Games promos at the moment. For people who don't know what those are, they are promos that will have an EB Games stamp on the card, similar to how we get GameStop promos over here in the US. EB Games promos were released in Canada, Australia, New Zealand for a while. Haven't been released in Canada for a little while, because in Canada, EB Games changed to GameStop, and they've started getting the GameStop promos again. Hasn't been too bad. We've had a list of them. We know what we're missing. Hey, guess what? Turns out this week, the Canadian ones have a slightly different logo to the Australian, New Zealand ones. The Canadian ones say EB Games, and then they have a tiny little maple leaf at the end of them, because it's Canada. And the Australian, New Zealand ones didn't have that. So I've spent most of this week trying to troll through a load of old files, a load of old things, messaging a lot of people to try and figure out which cards had both a Canadian release and an Australia, New Zealand release, so would have both variants. As far as I can see it, there are only 2 cards that actually have both variants, and it's the Flapple from Rebel Clash and Sandaconda from, I want to say, Darkness Ablaze, or maybe Battle Styles. I'll put a picture of it on the screen right now. Those are the only 2 that have both versions. They have the Canadian one with the maple leaf, and they have the Australia, New Zealand one without the maple leaf. I would say the Duraludon promo has the Canadian maple leaf one, but does not have an Australian, New Zealand version. That one only has the Canadian stamp, as far as I can find out. If you are someone from Australia, New Zealand who has a EB Games Duraludon without a maple leaf, please let me know. But everyone I've spoken to in Australia, New Zealand says that they're pretty sure they never got Duraludon. And then after that, EB Games in Canada switched to GameStop. So everything after that only has the one version. But that's what I've been chasing up this week. That's been my my big thing, and Laura's had a lot of help with that, reaching out to a lot of international judges. So I'm just throwing that out there. That's what my week, or last 2 weeks, really have been.
So a couple things. Dan mentioned folks that are in New Zealand, Australia, that kind of stuff. Also, if you're in Canada, and I guess if you have access to these cards, we'd be very interested. If for some reason you've been able to figure that out. Dan, are you finding any of these cards? Are you seeing any of them out there still? Because these are older sets you're talking about.
Yeah, from what I can see, for the Flapple and the Sandaconda, it seems like the Canadian versions are easy to find. And that's what I have. Me and Laura both have the Canadian Flapple. I have a Canadian Sandaconda. We never got around to buying a second one. But it seems like on eBay, those 2, plus the Duraludon, which was only in Canada, are pretty easy to get a hold of for not very much money. To be honest, since I'm putting this out, I might go and buy ours now before I put this video out, just to make sure we have them. But it's the Australian, New Zealand versions of the Flapple and the Sandaconda seem a little bit rarer. I'm seeing fewer photos of those, but it looks like they are out there, but we're hitting the same problems that we are with the modern day EB Games promos, is that when you're seeing a listing on eBay, it's like a $20 card and then it's $15 shipping, because shipping from Australia is just so expensive. So it's all about just, I mean, find people in Australia who will help me. Either if I can just get a load of stuff shipped to someone in Australia, they can hold it for me until they get it all together and then send it to me in one go. Trying to figure something like that out. I don't think the cards themselves we should have too much trouble getting. It's going to be a little bit iffy, but I don't think there's anything crazy rare with these. I think we're going to be okay.
All right, and you know that I'm in the process of trying to buy us some EB Games promos from the newer sets. Yeah. And the only thing that's interesting about that to me is I do not understand why those prices have not fallen. You know, you and I have talked recently about how come, it seems like all these things after they come out, they price down for a while or after a while. But in this case, they really haven't. And they may or may not based on actual, of course, global demand and supply. But what's more interesting to me is that you have to always worry in the background about a bunch of them coming out, right? And that's what you never know, whether or not that happens 2 weeks afterwards or 5 months later. So for some reason, that Charmander has very much held its ground. But hopefully they're on the way to us now. And I'll just say one thing for folks that are listening, just a piece of information. There's a lot of sellers that think that to be protected, you must ship to your PayPal address that's in your PayPal account on the system. And so I went back and forth with this seller when I bought it because he wanted to send via courier, and I typically go to my PO box in the town, postal service, and he debated me, just strongly, and he showed me the stuff from PayPal, and I said, "Can you just pick up the phone and call PayPal?" "Well, it's tough to get through." I said, "Can you just pick up the phone and call PayPal?" So finally, after back and forth, he called PayPal because we didn't want to cancel the transaction and redo it, because you've got currency charges going back and forth across the world. And you also have potential fees for the seller. So finally he picked up the phone, he called PayPal, and then he's like, "Okay, which address did you want to ship to?" And I go, "Yeah, that's the one, and my physical address." And they said, "That's fine." And it was all done. So don't let these sellers tell you have to go to the address. If you have to make a change or something to another one, PayPal allows it. Just get them on the phone and get it done. So
I will say, the reason I think the Charmander is so much higher than these other EB Games promos is we've talked about master set collecting, people not really doing it anymore. I think 151 is kind of an exception. I think there are way more people collecting 151 and trying to do a full master set, all variants, everything like that. Way more people doing it with that set than anyone is with any of the other sets. I think this is a set where people are actively going out of their way to try and get everything for it. So I think that is just what's going on with the Charmander. I don't think there's a lower supply than the other EB Games promos. I think just way more people actually want it.
Dan, why is 151 so popular? Because I don't disagree with you. Everything I've read is, it's amazing, amazing, amazing. And and we're going to talk about investing at some point here in the not too distant future. But why is it so popular? And should the whole world be going out and buying 151 stuff now for the future? Because it really is so much popular than all of the other recent sets.
So one, it's a special release set. So it's the same release type as, Crown Zenith or Shining Fates, that kind of thing, where it doesn't get regular booster boxes. And it doesn't get printed for as long. The main series sets will normally be available from distributors and stuff for a couple of years. The special sets a bit of a shorter time frame. But also it's just because it is only original series Pokemon. So there's none of the newer Pokemon. There's a lot of people who are collecting in the game really just tie themselves and really associate with that first generation of Pokemon, maybe the first two generations. And to have only those Pokemon and to have every single one of those Pokemon in a set, it's not something we've ever seen before. It's not something we're likely to ever see again. The fact that it's numbered as Pokedex order, fully in Pokedex order, rather than within type or within hollows, just means it really, really appeals to those people who just love Generation 1, love those Generation 1 games. And of course, we have there's the special illustrations of the original 3 starters, the Zapdos, the Alakazam. All of those are very, very amazing looking cards, and they're just ones that a lot of people are chasing. It's just the set in a binder. I think if you're flipping through it, just looks like one of the nicest sets they've ever done.
And Dan, what's the so just compare for me real quick, because I know we had a comment on Nostalgianomics about, we were talking about evolutions, and that was kind of a reprint of the base set sort of thing, and how that had gone up after the Logan Paul, whole kind of saga in the hobby.
Yeah.
How does Evolutions as a set compare to 151? Is it in Pokédex order? Is it not? How does it look?
No, so Evolutions is not in Pokédex order. I believe that, in fact, I can grab my binder right here, 1 second.
And is 151 the same characters with different art, new art, or is it like, you'd think I would know, guys? Haven't I opened my binder? Of course I haven't opened my binder. I've got too many new cards to acquire. Stop criticizing me. What's going on out there? Don't you judge me until you've walked a mile in my shoes. I wrote in one of the new recent comments, size 11s. I'm not proud. Big feet. Tiny feet for a small man. Big feet for a small guy. Dan, what is it? Talk to me.
I'll say Evolutions is not in Pokédex order. It's in the type order. So it has, all the grass Pokemon, then all the fire Pokemon, then all the water Pokemon. It is sort of a reprint of base set. They've reused a lot of the artwork and a lot of the attacks and stuff, but it's not an exact one-for-one reprint. And they've added in stuff like EXs, breaks, Mega Pokemon, that kind of thing. So it's not just a pure nostalgia set in the way that 151 is with the Pokemon, where they're just the pure regular Pokemon. There's a few EXs, but for the most part, it is just the regular Pokemon, and there's no Megas or anything like that to get in the way. And it's the fact that it's every Pokemon, which Evolutions doesn't have. Evolutions is still just a selection of Pokemon from Generation 1.
Okay. And Dan, just dovetail one last piece of this. Yeah. Recently, there was this $400 set that just came out, and it didn't sell very well, and it's amazing. Mine came in. It's like 800 pounds. I mean, it's like this monster box. It's just a beautiful piece. It's beautiful, but apparently it's got nothing inside it. So what is that? That's some kind of Ultimate Classic collection. Give us a name, Dan, and tell us what's in that.
That's the Pokemon Classic collection. So it contains 3 60-card decks, and it has a large playing board, like a playmat style. I think it's a solid wooden board. It has 3D printed, special damage counters, poison burn markers, that kind of thing. And I think I've said it here before, a lot of people bought into that because they hoped that the trainers that are in the decks would be standard legal if they were reprints of already existing trainers. Then it turned out they wouldn't be. So a lot of people who bought quite a lot of it, hoping for that uptick in price in those trainers, didn't get it. And I think it was just a much more widely released product than people expected. I know people were talking about, is every local game store going to get 1? Maybe they're going to get 2. A lot of local game stores were saying, well, we can do a pre-order list, but we don't know how many we're going to get. Like my LGS, they said, we'll buy as many as we can, but that could be 1. Like, we don't know. They haven't given us any direction on this. Then it turned out even the smallest game stores were getting 4, 5, 6 copies of it. GameStop had thousands available. I think Walmart online, Target online maybe had it available for a while. But it was just a much wider release than everyone was expecting, and had that issue with people were expecting some of it to be standard playable, and it wasn't.
But what's in the 60-card decks? Are they reprints of the base set? Are they the base set, the Generation 1 characters? What's in those sets, those decks?
A lot of them are reprints of the original characters. There's a lot of the original base set cards, like there's the Charizard, Blastoise, Venusaur, Chansey, a few others from base set. And it was some of the base set trainers are in that deck, which is what people were hoping to be able to use. Then there's also, it's mixed in with some new Pokemon EX. So there's, I think, a Lugia EX, maybe a Ho-Oh EX. And then those new Pokemon, the new EXs that are new for those decks, those are getting released separately in another product later. So the new cards are getting released in something else later, but not the whole decks. It's a kind of confusing thing that they're doing, but that's the way I understand it, is it's the stuff that's new for the decks is going to be is going to be re-released, but the decks themselves are primarily retro stuff. They're primarily reprints of vintage cards.
Okay. Did you open yours?
Not yet, because I kind of want to do a video on it, but I need to figure out my setup in order to be able to film it, because it's like the length of my entire desk and more. And my camera captures one half of my desk for recording, so I'm going to have to either get bigger poles or something, or I'm going to have to rearrange something to be able to do the video on it.
Sounds like it's time to move, Dan. Leave the dogs behind. Maybe leave Laura behind. No, you can't leave Laura behind. She's probably going to leave you behind. Get out of the house, get a bigger place to video. And Dan, put some pictures in because people want to see this stuff, okay?
There'll be pictures, yeah.
Okay. Like, don't, even though you think like Evolutions, everybody loves it, knows it, hates it, whatever. Like maybe we could have some comparison pictures just of an old style Charizard and a new style Evolutions, and one from this, classic collection, or the 151 or whatever. So
yeah, we'll make sure that those are all in.
Okay, I'm ready to move on to comments. And this, guys, if you have kids around, this is the time to get them out of the room, because I'm going to start cussing for more views.
He's not. If he does, it's getting bleeped.
God, what? I am so sick of you on that editing floor. You know what? I don't even know, until you're trained as an actual film editor, you should just leave the power stuff behind, buddy. All right, comments. Put something up there and let's do it.
Let's take a look at your comments.
Okay, so obviously we kind of have 2 weeks worth of comments to go over, because we had Alex on last week, but the week before we didn't really announce that Alex was coming on, so it was a bit of a last minute guest booking. So we have comments from a couple of videos. David, I know you've picked out a few, so why don't you highlight some of your favorite comments and we'll discuss those.
All right, so let's get first on with, I like to always talk about and acknowledge the folks who shared our podcast in their stories. And those folks this week were Chris Ondo, Stephen Kassoon, TCG Cross Collector, Cross or Jacinto from across the world, Dan Dyer, Jeffrey Kaiser, or Lamar Kaiser as he goes by. A lot of people have too many names. It's too complicated. Like if you're one of his best friends, you call him Lamar. If you're one of his second best friends, it's, Jeffrey. If you just know him from work, you just say, hey, Kaiser, what's up? Fazul, also known as Gaknak, Gacnac. And a lot of other people shared some of my Instagram posts, which is part of a way to get an additional entry in the drawing. But you only get an additional entry in the drawing if you have to post a comment on this video, and you have to let us know that you watched this video by putting in the details that we ask you. So I just again want to clarify. We'll do that a little bit later too. So another but thank you to all those guys. We can't exist, and I know the follower base is growing rapidly. We're both so excited about that, thanks to your humble and kind support. So, all right, Craig Holmes, he likes to weigh in on the character of the previous week and give us some information about the Lugia, who was the giveaway character. And he said Lugia may be based on Ryujin, a dragon who lived on the ocean floor and was the Shinto god of the sea. Lugia's shiny colors, red and white, are the same colors as the coral Ryujin's palace was made of. Thank you, Craig, for doing nothing other than just waiting all week for us to give you a character and you figuring out what it is. You should get a life. We love you to death. Keep it up. Okay. And then Craig also, let's go into one of his comments. He said, when collecting, I don't specifically go out looking to make a profit. So we were talking this from the Nostalgianomics video, as I hope to hang on to my collection forever. But what I do try to do is always buy under the current market value when I can. So, Craig, I always try to make my decisions by using a crystal ball as well. So it's, it gets, how wonderful is that, my friend? We're just going to buy under the current market. Craig, what do you think? It's like easy. You just wait and then the market falls. And then it's like somebody rings a bell. It's like Craig's turn. No, buddy, it's not that simple. It's a great goal, but it's not that easy to do. But it's a great goal to have if you can do it. I'll tell you that for sure. Now, this comment comes right for Dan, and this one's perfect because catch 'em all collectibles. Why do I do that? Catch 'em all collectibles. Well, because you have to get Pokeballs. That's what it is. And he's like collectibles. It should be catch 'em all collectibles and collectibles. Then there'll be no mistakes. Just Dan, maybe change. This is the other Dan. Dan, who is catch 'em all collectibles. Maybe you should just change some of this. So he said, shout out to all the sugar mamas of the hobby. So clearly he's involved with one. Alex is involved with one. Dan Norton is involved with one. I missed the frickin' sugar mama boat. But you guys know there are these websites. They're not good. Stay away. Sugar daddy, sugar mama and stuff. So maybe we just come up with something, Dan. We're not doing a lot of, revenue happening here. We just start out a Pokemon Sugar Mama website, and you just basically support your lover's Pokemon hobby purchases. But then, Dan, because you can't just let people be happy for you, but not get a chance to do something of their own. Does that make sense, Dan? Are you in on this one?
You can do that in your own time.
Okay. Thanks for the permission, Dan. I appreciate it. Anybody that wants to go in on that, if you're a website, designer, let's talk about it. I think there's something in that, we can to make it into brand stuff. Laura can do our drawings. So at Derek6423, he pops out of the woodwork, okay? Like a small rodent that just crawls up one night and you're like, how'd you get up in my bed? He said, small world. A couple years ago, I bought multiple times from David, 2 purchases being his Expedition and Skyridge complete non-holo set. I couldn't believe how minty they were. So, what's nice about that is I haven't seen or talked to Derek forever. And it was nice of him to just come out, watch a video and say, hey, I did this. So, and if it had been a bad comment, like I went and I bought something from him, it was some of the worst purchases I've ever made, no way I would have got highlighted on this show. So I appreciate Derek being positive and getting something good for me. And there will be more stuff coming out because I'm breaking up those sets again. The rest of my extras are getting broken up. They're going to go on the website at some point. I'm still trying to just get, like, maybe I'm doing more Red Bulls every day to try to get energy to get it out there. It's not a advertisement for Red Bull or Celsius with the caffeine, unless you're watching as a representative of Red Bull or Celsius, and you can send something as a sponsorship, and then I will absolutely I will go to the nth degree of the earth to make sure your product is highlighted in the way that it should be. At Kartra, KIRTRACERG, Kartra Surge 3. Love this episode. Nostalgianomics is very nice and super smart, and David is hilarious. His constant witty cracks at Dan have me laughing, haha. The only reason I put that in there because, guys, somebody actually thought that when some of the stuff I was saying was not meant to be like fun, it's meant to be critical and stuff. If I didn't have fun on this stuff, if Dan didn't let me rip him and have the most fun in the world being witty, yeah, I'm so witty, that wouldn't be what it is, right? I don't have time for this. I have a cat. The cat needs to be fed. The cat likes to sit by a heater when it's cold. I have to turn on the heater. I'm very busy. I sit here and do this all day. So yeah, please give us the credit for letting me give Dan a little baloney every once in a while. I appreciate that. At Codes Cards Pro 3975. I know this guy. I talk to this guy every 3 minutes, but God, right now I should have his name sitting right here. Whenever I don't know a name, I'm just going to say it's Dan. It's probably another Dan. I think it is. And I'm sorry for messing up your name right now, buddy, because I really should know it. But when I have to get up this early to do a podcast, nothing really fits. So he said, great interview. Joint collaborations like this is a great way to keep growing both channels. And then followed up by another comment from at David LYV1. Please bring Jake Pokenomics, one of the top people. I just enjoy listening to you on YouTube. So what I like about those is it is really fun to get people on. It does increase the viewership. And Dan always says, please let other people know we're looking. We have some people who've reached out to us. We'd love to have them on, and we'll have them on soon. And we are going to dovetail this into what we talked about, which is an additional maybe once a month podcast where we get on maybe 4 or 5 people for a 15-minute or so segment each. And we'll talk about that. That's in another comment here in a minute. But yeah, we love those suggestions. Keep them coming. Dan, Jake and I, we have a history, Pokenomics. I won't sit in front of that guy because the way he stares me down, it's like I know more than you, even though I'm 1/4 of your age. And I won't put up with it, Dan. So, but maybe you could get him on and I could just sit in the background and shoot questions over your way, okay?
Yeah, there's no way you would just sit in the background and not talk during a podcast.
Man, that is so, no. You know me like, you're almost like a work wife, buddy. I appreciate that. Okay, Stephen Kassoon, if I didn't put a couple of his comments in, he threatened me. Also, because he never wins the drawing and I get specific DM threats in my thing like, this is rigged and you don't like me. I hate that stuff. Stephen, it's not rigged, although there's a good chance you'll never win. But he said, would love to hear thoughts on comparing vintage markets and how different they are. That is such a general comment. So, Dan, I'm going to throw that your way and just act like you're saying something that's going to appease Stephen Kassoon, okay? Would love to hear thoughts on comparing vintage markets and how different they are.
I mean, Stephen, you may have to give us a bit more detail on what you want from that question. You're talking about, comparing vintage markets, like comparing graded to raw cards or comparing Pokemon vintage to other games vintage markets. We could definitely bring some of that stuff up if you just let us know, I guess, kind of what exactly you were looking for comparisons on.
Yeah, it's good. It's good that you say that, because I actually interpret it a very specific way. And now that you say it, I realize it could be lots of different things, right? It could be vintage
Yeah.
Pokemon versus Yu-Gi-Oh versus Magic. But I kind of thought that what he was asking was, let's compare like Gen 1, Gen 2, Gen 3, Gen 4, if you kind of essentially thought of them as all vintage markets. And the only thing I would say about those things is, um, those eras, which he probably isn't asking about, but I'll throw it in. I think you really have to balance the true economics. In other words, demand versus supply. And so, you look at like the first era of Pokemon back in the 1999 8, 99 timeframe. There's so much demand because it's all such nostalgia and it's so vintage and it's the very first things. And there's just a constant demand for it, despite the fact that there was so much of the product produced. And then you move back into the later, you start moving along into the EX era, where there's, everybody loves it, but then the supply is not there. So it's escalated because it was down years for Pokemon when they were produced. So now, because the supply isn't there, the price has escalated exponentially, making it so much harder to acquire those cards despite people's love of them. And then you continue to move along, we're going to talk later today about different eras. So yeah, I think that Steven's going to have to be a little bit more specific in the vintage markets and what you want us to cover. But I think number one, first and foremost, if you start with supply and demand and you start looking at what collectors' level of interest is and then how much of the product is out there, that begins to allow you, even between Magic, Yu-Gi-Oh, and Pokemon, what's in demand, what's popular at any given time, is the game sustainable? All those things Dan has talked about in the past, I think will make a big difference in how quickly you can get a handle on how you would start to compare. Steven started then said, taking my hobby into a business scares me. I might lose the love for it. So I'm going to take this one real quick. This comes again off Alex's thing, and the idea that you can turn your business, you can turn your hobby into a business potentially. You can lose, where I'd say you might lose the love for it would be if you regret selling something that you wanted for your collection. That's one way to have the heart really pull at you. And the other part is when bad actors get involved, and sometimes you're looking and you're selling and you're doing things, and now your day is going badly because somebody's tried to rip you off or has said you didn't send them what you were supposed to send them. You're dealing on the phone with eBay or PayPal and hassles. So that is the ways that I think you could lose love for it. But I think that any business, you have to have separate inventory. You have to put it aside. You have to understand, I'm not going to look back, and it's part of selling. You have to segregate what you're selling as part of the business versus your collection. And that makes it easier because you sort of have target things that you're not even going to think about once they're gone. You've already identified them. And then from the standpoint of bad actors, which is unfortunate, every business in this world has a loss allowance, has a piece of their budget that goes to losses, customer complaints, damage, etc. And so you just psychologically have to understand that, deal with the expenses, but not let your mind get into it. So there's very structured ways. Again, something else I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. But there's ways to start a business in a small way and not let yourself get off the beaten path too far when you're trying to do this. But I don't think, for those that are out there and watching and listening, and all I would say is, from the standpoint of doing this and starting a business and starting many businesses, you got to take one extra step. If you don't take an extra step, you'll never know. So don't ever let the fear of failure or the fear of losing the love for the hobby stop you. Take a small step, start on eBay, whatever, and let it kind of see where it goes from there, and if you're enjoying yourself or not. All right, Dan, here's the Pokemon Pop.
Well, I want to add something to that, what you talk about. So I think the other thing to think about when you're saying you could lose the love for the hobby or for your hobby if you turn it into a business, one of the main issues with that, I think, is that when you are heavily involved in a hobby, if you find yourself not enjoying it, if you find that it's becoming too stressful, you can take a break. You can say, like, if I just said I was, I guess I'm not a great example now because we're doing this every week. I'm doing videos. I'm kind of trying to turn this into a hobby, turn this hobby into a money-making revenue, whatever. But back when I was just not doing videos, if I was just collecting Pokemon, or if I talk about like with Magic and stuff, if I was really hating it, I could say, okay, I'm just not going to think about Magic for 2 weeks. And I could have that time off. I could relax. I could go back to it and say, okay, let's see if I'm renewed now. Once you're a business, you can't really do that. If you're a buying and selling business, you're going to have those constant orders coming in, and you need to be moving cards quite a lot, or just have to watch market trends a lot. So there is that whole idea of not being able to take the break once your hobby becomes your business. I think that's where a lot of people lose love for their hobby, is just that having to be involved in it constantly. It's no longer a choice to be involved in it that much. You just have to be.
Yeah, and when you say that, Dan, it makes me think that someone like, let me say a couple things. Number one, look at Nostalgianomics Alex. He'll be the first to tell you he doesn't know a darn thing. The guy is faking it till he makes it for ridiculous amounts of time, and he's successful as heck, okay? Everybody loves to watch him. I'm convinced it's just because he's so good looking and he's so hyper, and I'm surprised he doesn't cuss. Alex, cuss more with the hyperness. You'll double your views in like 4 weeks. But he's out there and everybody's watching. Now, if I look at you, Stephen Kassoon, I think you're witty as heck, okay? You send us way too many comments. Settle it down, buddy. But you're sending us 5, 10, 15 comments a video, and everything is clever and witty and things he's thinking about. So what's interesting to that for me is that you could be out there just on a podcast doing the same stuff and interjecting your thoughts, where it's not actually about, it's a tangential business. It's something involving the hobby, but you're not necessarily selling. You're creating a revenue stream. So what's so unique these days is with social media and all of these different formats for you to get out there, businesses can be defined and created in very different number of ways. So yeah. All right. Pokey Pop. This is the one I was talking about. I am the worst thing, guys. My mind still works really well. I still run lots of money for company clients and everything, but names are my demise. So, Pokey Pop, Dan,
Mike Martin.
I think. Do you know who it is? Because I think I do.
Yeah, it's Mike Martin is his name.
Mike Martin. Okay, I just didn't want to say it if it's not. So, and the reason I say this is because Mike asked me to get his name straight a couple of videos ago. So, Mike, my sincere apologies. You're obviously a part of the pre-release Raichu lore. You were back involved in that middlemaning back then, and I know that, and I knew that, and that's what I sent in the provenance to CGC. Can't believe I graded with them. Bunch of shysters. Just kidding. I have to beat up a grading company every single video. I do it. I'm just teasing because everybody loves to beat them up. So Mike, thank you for your involvement back then, and thank you for clarifying that you are Pokey Pop and not some other like Pokey Grandpa, Pokey my father is my that kind of stuff. So here's what Mike said. He said, maybe they'll have to start doing provenance on sealed boxes. I got all of mine directly from TPCI, so I know they're real. Exactly. And how many people, what a great thing to be Mike Martin and have the kind of reputation that somebody could actually believe that you got them from TPCI working there in all the years that you've had them. But even these days, if somebody said, I actually bought them back this time, like I know mine are good because they were bought 15 years ago, but somebody could argue, but you really don't. So I do think provenance is an interesting thing. The question becomes, who bears the brunt of loss in the selling of these things when somebody sort of guarantees it and then you buy it and all of a sudden, for whatever reason, that once in a lifetime happens and there's nothing inside the box. So, is it the seller, the buyer?
We saw that with Logan Paul's case when there was that grading company that they authenticated it as a first edition case. He always said that he bought it because it had been authenticated by a company. And then in the video, if you watch Logan's video where they cracked it and found that it was fake, the guy from the grading company is there. And the first thing he says is, oh, we all got duped, agreed? And no, if you are going to be a company saying that our job is we're going to be authenticating products, you fully have to take the blame if it's not actually authentic. If that's your company, if that's what you're claiming your expertise is, it falls to you. Because the whole point of this authentication, the reason why a lot of people buy graded cards from reputable companies is because they want to know that they're getting the real deal without them having to put the time in, because it takes a long time. We've been in this hobby a long time to spot the fakes and stuff like that. Sometimes the fakes are getting good. So people who are just new to it, or people who are not wanting to put that level of time in, or don't have that level of time to put in, want to buy this graded stuff partially just to say, okay, I know that it's authentic because this company has backed it up. And that's what they need to do. Any company that is authenticating stuff needs to take 100% of the blame if it turns out it's not authentic.
Yeah, and what's happened now, Dan, is no one's going to do that anymore. So because of that, and because of lots of other things, and because of other stuff I'm going to read here in a moment, these grading card companies are not going to authenticate things that are too potentially difficult to actually authenticate. And that will be sealed stuff and all of those kinds of things, because again, people will view them as, and do view them as, almost like an insurance company, and they actually offer insurance and things when things go wrong. So there's no incentive, there's no business reason for them to do any of that anymore. And all of the big players, like we talked about last week, the week before, they basically don't authenticate sealed material. You have to figure out a way to get it open. Some people say, if you're going to buy from me, you better fly here. You better get it open on the premises so I can make sure there's no hanky-panky after the fact. So it's all changed. I just don't think you're going to find anyone in that role anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I think King Gary had a sealed first edition Pokemon case, and I believe even he has cut one of the flaps open. So the other one of the flaps is still sealed down, so you can't get the boxes out without it being obvious. So you can tell it's still a case, but he's had to open one of the flaps just to show, yes, this is a case of Pokemon First Edition, because I believe it was just impossible to authenticate it, really, just from the outside of the box. Whereas being able to cut that one flap open, you can see that it's authentic boxes inside.
Yeah, and I guess what I would say at this point is, and I know people will disagree, but I'm going to say thank you for the live streamers, because a lot of the live streamers are the ones that are taking these boxes and are putting them out there and selling the packs. And so there's an immediate way to legitimize the contents, good, bad, or indifferent. But they're less worried about having to have a sealed box remain in a sealed box collection for the next 5 or 10 years. They actually can get it and can open it and make sure it's what it means it's meant to be. And that, of course, eliminates boxes from the market. It heightens the value of others' collections, potentially the boxes they own. But it also allows for them to have a way of opening a box when they buy it in front of you, not having to keep it sealed, and can actually verify if there's a lot of this other resealed stuff out there. So
I've seen some pictures now of like first edition boxes. I think PokeRadar has shared some pictures before of like where they've taken the cellophane off a first edition box, confirmed that the packs are authentic, and then the authentication company has then put their own like tamper stickers back on the box to stick the lid shut on the box again, so it no longer has the original seal on it. But this company is saying, okay, we were there when the cellophane was taken off, we've inspected the packs that are inside, and now we're sealing it back up ourselves as a box.
Yeah, that's definitely happened. And one of the problems is that as the bad actors in the hobby get more and more sophisticated, those tamper-resistant things get more easy to duplicate. It's all been done to some degree, so none of
it's the same as with everything. It's just the technology has to stay one step ahead of the people who are trying to fake it. That's not unique to Pokemon. That's not unique to collectibles. That's how the world works. I mean, even with pirated media as far back as I don't know, as soon as home video was invented, it was a case of the people who were putting out the products were trying to stay one step ahead of the people who were counterfeiting them.
Yeah. Yeah. And what's sad is you eventually get to a point where the OGs of this hobby, they're not here anymore. And, and that'll be, hopefully years and years away. But I'll give a quick example. I have a different Aquapolis sealed boxes, EX Aquapolis set. And one of the boxes I bought from Aquapolis has a clear cellophane wrap on it, whereas the other one has Wizards of the Coast cellophane wrap. So if you're new and you're skeptical and you're 30 years old right now, and I try to sell you that sealed, clear cellophane wrap box, you're going to tell me that it was resealed, or I resealed it, or the person I bought it from resealed it, and there are no Aquapolis packs inside it because you've seen a Wizards of the Coast Aquapolis wrapped box. But I bought that box from Collector's Cash from Behman, the owner, Behman, and many years ago, and he explained to me that the end of the run of the print run of Aquapolis, they didn't have the regular Wizards of the Coast wrapping anymore, so they wrapped it with sealed wrap that doesn't have the label on it, the stamp of the company's name. And I know that to be the case because I know everybody knows Behman and he doesn't screw around. It's not something like that. But if you didn't know and he wasn't around anymore and we weren't telling the stories, it would just make people more worried about all of these different kinds of variations. So again, you always wish and hope that people like Dan are here for a long time as historians and people that can document from whence the hobby has come to where it's going to, because otherwise this information just kind of fades away.
Yeah. I mean, I will say that's something I've just learned. I didn't know the whole thing about the clear Acropolis ones. I guess sealed product has never been my thing as opposed to the individual cards, but I'd never heard that story before of, late prints of Acropolis having the clear wrap.
Yeah, I made it up, Dan, honestly. All of that was completely fabricated just for the purposes of being able to sell one of my boxes to an unsuspecting buyer quite soon. I have them on the market. Right. So if you bought my store, you believed anything I said, and you're interested in an Aquapolis box, get to me soon because there's going to be a rush of people wanting that one unique box with the clear wrapping now. Guaranteed to have Aquapolis packs inside and untampered with. Another comment from Ace Trainer Joel. I've been personally grateful for the podcast and deal of the episodes. It's given me an opportunity to collect cards I wouldn't have been able to otherwise. Thanks so much. Appreciate that, Joel. Joel's been a buyer of a lot of that stuff that we offer on the weekly podcast. You'll see that as time goes on, I'm trying to change up the values. Sometimes it's a $20 item. Sometimes it's a $200 item. But this way, different levels of collectors, different levels of interest, and different levels of fun can be partaken of with the different opportunities that we're offering. So Codes Cards Pro, $39.75. Again, like I said, if you don't know the name, it's definitely Dan. I looked him up. So it is Dan. Regarding collector interviews, great idea, Dave. A single video released once a month or every other month, compiled of short collector interviews would increase the interaction, allow you both a more flexible schedule, could be edited down to the most interesting parts. It'd be a lot of fun to hear the variety of perspectives and approaches people have to collecting, and have a couple question segments that all collectors answer, like what is your favorite Pokemon? What is your favorite card that you currently own? What was your introduction to Pokemon, etc. So if you're interested in doing that, rather than us reaching out, which we will and we can, please reach into my DMs like I love you to do, and let us know, hey, I think you might find a little bit of my collection interesting. Why don't you queue me up for this? We'll be interested. And as soon as we can get Dan off his butt, doing a little bit of work over there, we're going to try to get this thing up and running. We would do is we'd find you, we tape an interview with you for 15 minutes, and then we compile that segment to add on as an addendum to 3 other segments and then publish it like once a month. But we really are looking forward to doing that. That would be fun. Dan had one other comment.
If people are interested in that, drop a message to the Koffee Talks Instagram as well. Message Dave and message the Koffee Talks Instagram, just so I can kind of keep track of who's interested in doing that too.
Yeah, and it makes our Koffee Talk should be a more used Instagram handle because that is the podcast. But I don't have a problem either way. It's just that what Dan thinks is he thinks I keep all of you to myself, and you're all in my hearts more so than Dan. But I'm not going to not share you with Dan unless you go to Koffee Talks and share yourself. All right, Dan, the next Dan, the same Dan. I'm not allowed to say last names now because some people don't want me to, but I can say last names, but I'm not going to in this case. So, but I know Dan's last name because he's bought stuff and I ship stuff to him. So he said, this was interesting regarding purchasing early. So what Dan and I have been talking about lately is it even worthwhile to purchase early? And I'm going to talk about this, and not today, maybe next podcast, about why we've said it isn't worth purchasing early anymore. He says, I like to at least buy some from a financial standpoint, by the way. He says, I like to at least buy some of the first print run of a set. Sometimes conditions vary between different print runs, and occasionally the quality is better on the first run compared to subsequent prints. This is less often the case, but still a thought to consider if condition is important to you and you enjoy opening packs. What I liked about that comment is, we think that the most misguided group in the entire community of Pokemon is the error collectors, errors and misprints. We think those peoples are psychologically crazy. I don't even have to put it any other way. Dan agrees with me in full. They don't know what they're doing, okay? So the thing is, what's going on there is if you're a misprint collector, maybe picking up different series, print run 1, print run 2, that kind of stuff, might avail you of all kinds of different kinds of nuances, variants, things that are, not that are corrected later. So I don't know that Dan was referring specifically to that Cards Pro, but I thought it was interesting just from a different perspective. Dan?
Couple of things to say on that. One, I would just like to point out, this week you've spoke to me again about you wanting to try and get these things on Spotify where they're audio only, and then you're doing things like that where you say one thing while shaking your head to indicate that you're lying, which will not come across on an audio only version. Secondly, when we were talking about the stuff of buying early and how it's better to just leave it a little bit, I think we were mainly talking about promos and variants. It has come across because of stuff like these Pokemon Together promos and the EB Games promos and stuff, not really the idea of the sets themselves. It's been more about the promos, because the promos are the things where you can be told one thing about the release and then it can be completely different. The sets, you always kind of know that they're going to be in print for a while. I kind of get what you're saying. I know that some people say that the print quality does go down a bit after the first print runs, but I usually most of my stuff comes from the first print run from sets because we're getting it early from tournaments and things like that. But yeah, the discussion we were having was primarily about promos rather than actual set cards.
No, I didn't think we were, Dan. So let me. Rarely do I disagree with you, even though I think most of what you say is wrong. I'm just afraid to comment because I'm afraid you won't videotape me the next week on a podcast.
I'll say, you were talking a bit about when you were buying your complete full sets from people, waiting a bit for the price to go down. I know you were mentioning that. More of the discussion we were having was about the promos where suddenly 10,000 extras get released. I think that's what a lot of the discussion hinged around. But yeah, I guess you were talking a bit as well about the financial aspect of buying your complete set within 2 weeks of the set release or within a couple of months, so the price comes down.
Yeah, because what happens is if you're building a set, and maybe people build sets early and often and that's all they do, they don't build them later. But if you're building a set, well, and I guess it doesn't matter, because if you're building a set early, you're probably a distributor. You probably got some kind of near distributor prices. But let's presume, for argument's sake, that you build a set early versus you had to buy the boxes at $95 a box. Whereas you waited and now they're at $85 a box or $80 because there's a plethora of the boxes and an oversupply 6 months down the road. Again, I was talking kind of about all of it. I was just saying, hey, even if you want to buy booster boxes, you might be better to wait, something we talked about with Alex about last week, that you might just want to wait for this stuff to become a glut on the market when these buyers want to return their capital and, roll over their capital and buy something else. And we've got an opportunity to buy stuff cheaper. So this whole concept of waiting in general seems like a prudent thing to do from a financial standpoint, whether or not you're talking about the sealed, the sets, or the promotional cards.
Yeah, the only time where it's not best to wait is where it is a very rare item. When we're talking about either something that probably shouldn't have been released, or when we're talking about like trophy cards and stuff at Worlds. When it is an actual rare item, that's the only time where it's best to try and get it ASAP rather than try and wait on it. But yeah, everything else, the more and more we're seeing, it just seems always much better to wait.
Well, and Dan, I want to move on, but every time you open your mouth, I just want to throw a dagger your direction, buddy. So I can't. Okay. Dan, when you talk about like the trophy cards, but there's also an argument, counter argument, right? I mean, here's the thing: if there's only one of that card, and there'll only be one of that card ever available, then maybe you got to jump on it. But as we've said, now you go the trophy card from 2023, and we get to 2024. Nobody wants that 2023 card, and it comes out. Let's say you were to talk about, I have no idea, for example, let's say that who won this year? Vance Kelly was his name or something, that won the Master TCG?
Yeah.
Okay, so Vance Kelly never sold his card, to our knowledge. We don't know. And so it is more likely the case that Vance Kelly will get less money if somebody wants to buy a number 1 trophy card from 2023. There is a good chance they might be able to buy it for less than I did by buying it already. And we talked about because that interest wanes and other things come into view and other things are more popular as they go forward, etc. And I know of somebody that bought a trophy card, a 3rd or 4th place trophy card from a couple years ago in the last few months for about $20,000, $19,20. That card would normally be a $30,000 to $35,000 card, 25 at least. So again, I'm just not sure. There's a lot of situations where waiting's not in the best interest, but we'll see.
Well, I will say on that depends if whether you're coming at it from a fully financial aspect or whether you're looking at the idea of completing your collection. Because with the sets and with these promos and stuff that we've seen, like the EB Games promos and stuff, they are going to be there. You know, it said most of the time they're falling in price. Very, very occasionally something will spike up a little bit, but they're going to be there. With the trophy cards, you just might not get the opportunity again. You know, Vance might not sell that card. You know, we're talking about if Vance does sell it, yeah, maybe it goes for lower, but there is also a very good chance he just decides to hang on to it and you don't get the opportunity to buy it again. So that is, if you're coming at it from a fully financial aspect where you're like, I just want to spend the lowest amount of money possible on this card, and you would rather not have the card than buy it way above what everyone else is buying it for, then yeah, it is better to wait. But if your goal is just, my number one goal is I want to own this card, then with the trophies, it is always still best to jump on early, I would say.
Okay. Christopher Ondo, Happy New Year's, guys. This is the year this podcast takes off. For those that are watching, share the podcast, please. Let others help us. We appreciate the continued involvement with all of you. And it just takes telling 1 or 2 more people to get to their group, and hopefully they enjoy what Dan is saying. No one ever likes what I have to say. William N. TCG said, a couple of times I paid the first to market price on a card I thought would be hard to find, only for multiple copies to appear later. So I try to be more patient now. Quick question for Dan. Do you know the reason why some simplified Chinese cards have the Pokemon logo imprinted on them?
No, I saw this comment and I've been looking into it. I haven't figured anything out yet. Chinese is one of the languages where it's very, very hard to get information for. Chinese and Korean are both very, very difficult to be pulling information for. I did try and do some looking into it when I saw this comment, and I'll keep looking into it. And if I can figure stuff out, I will definitely reply to the comment and let you know.
Okay. Here's I got a couple more at Nature's, and then it's EPYON at Nature's EPYON. I opened my cellophane cards. I have some sealed for perhaps future resale. So we've been talking about, do you keep them sealed? But listen to this. However, the sealed cellophane is easily reproduced, so you can't even know if it's original cellophane with 100% certainty. I've purchased the first movie Black Star promos, and they were all resealed cards. Inserts included based off the condition of the cards. So it's really, really very difficult when you have to worry about even anything. We know that in the potentially in the Van Gogh promos as well by the time that all gets done with. I did want to read this last one. I think it's interesting from what he said. With my 151 master set, I have all the stamp promos opened. I kept the packed in white card that comes with them, and I have the back page of my 151 binder as a sort of credits roll like a movie. This has those cards plus one of each code card marked with 151. I feel it helps for authentication in the distant future if they ever end up being worth something. And then Daz, DAZZZZAAA, 4 Z's and 3 A's. Thank you for answering my comments, DJ, Gigbytes, Uncle Dave. My next question is, if you have unlimited amount of money to open one set, but you can only keep one card, what is that set and which card do you want to keep?
I mean, is that just talking we can open any set of Pokemon, but we can only keep one card from the box that we open?
I think that's what he's asking.
I don't even know on that one, because any box I open, I'm going to want to keep the whole set. It would just be, I guess, if I could open an unlimited amount of EX Deoxys and get a Rayquaza Gold Star pack fresh. If I had unlimited money to keep opening that until I got a pack fresh Rayquaza Gold Star, under those rules, I think that's maybe what I'd go for.
Yeah, and funny, Dan, I was thinking that the general answer anybody would answer would be base set first edition, looking for the Charizard, right? That's the first answer I think most people would give. And then the second answer I was going to give after that was going to be exactly what you said, the Rayquaza Gold Stars. So I think people do like to own the real, grails, and those are a couple of them. Final comment is by Dan Sugar Mama, Laura, and she said, Aquapolis is my favorite set. So how do you call yourself my husband? Why do you think that you know me after all these years of being together? And you would assert that Crystal Guardians is my favorite set when you should know that Aquapolis is and always has been my favorite set. She basically showed him the door and then kicked him right out the exit. So, Dan, any comments? You want to say you're sorry or anything?
As I replied, I'm pretty sure that's changed at some point. I'm sure I've been told at some point that Crystal Guardians was the favorite set. I may have also been told at some point that Delta Species was the favorite set. And yeah, I've definitely been told Aquapolis was. At some point, I think it switches.
Okay.
I'm sticking with that story.
Yeah, no problem. These are small skirmishes that happen in the span of a marriage. Good luck keeping it together after these that are getting one to grow on the other. Okay, Dan, put in something that we're going to do a drawing right now, and then put a heading, and let's just roll right in, okay?
So, who won last week's giveaway?
So here we are at the time when we do our drawing winner. Last week it was Chris Ondo from Pittsburgh. So congratulations again for last week. I'm going to read this very quick to you because people wonder about what I talk about, true randomness, and I love to read this because it makes me laugh. Perhaps you have wondered how predictable machines like computers can generate randomness. In reality, most random numbers used in computer programs are pseudo-random, which means that they're generated in a predictable fashion using a mathematical formula. This is fine for many purposes, but it may not be random in the way you expect it if used to dice rolls and lottery drawings. Random.org, which is the site I use, they're not sponsoring me, offers true random numbers to anyone on the internet. The randomness comes from atmospheric noise. That's all I got to say. This week's winner, we had 14 participants, very standard number, exact same as last week. Not the same participants, though. And 18 total entries because some of those folks got 2 entries because they are sharing you can share a podcast share for that we put it out, or you can share one of my Instagram posts. This week's winner is Jeffrey Lamar Kaiser. So congratulations to him. And by the way, Jeffrey actually had a second, just like Chris Ondo last week, had 2 entries this week because of sharing. So I will send something out to Lamar, or I won't, or it may have already been sent because I knew this winner and he already bought a card from last week, but he won't know that until this happens when he sees this. So the winning card's on the way to him, thank goodness. Giveaway details, here's what you do. You watch the podcast, you listen for the information. Last week it was Lugia. This week it'll be a different character with a different number. You jump into my DMs. Why do I want you to do that? Because I'm lonely, okay? Sure, I want you guys to know I could be swiping right, left, up, or down. I don't care to make new friends. But at my age, I'm not even sure it's legal to swipe any direction. You understand? So I want you to just come and talk to me in my DMs. Give me the character's name, the character's number, and leave a comment on the video as well. And then if you do all that, you're entered into the drawing. And if you also share anything from the week of my Instagram posts or the podcast Koffee Talks, then we add you and give you another one. Okay, congratulations. I'm ready to move on. We're going fast now because I got time to make up and breakfast is waiting. So, Dan, deal of the podcast?
Yep.
It's time to find out David's deal of the episode.
All right, deal of the podcast. So, this is a strange one, guys, and some of you will think, wow, that's the dumbest thing I ever heard. But that's for you to think. I can't help that. I like the cards. I like all the cards. I collect all the cards because I'm the number one most comprehensive English collection, Pokemon card collection in the world, blah, blah, blah. Anyways, this week, the deal of the podcast is the Pokemon 2022 Complete Holiday Advent Calendar Snowflake Stamp promo set. It's an 8-card set. It's important to note this is the 2022 version, okay? All of the cards, Dan, we'll put them on this on the podcast thing. Put a bunch of pictures in, Dan. Make it looks like you're actually doing something. Yeah. I appreciate all that you do, Dan. I don't know how to put anything on the screen except I could hold it up now. Well, I could hold this up like this. Look at this. I can't see. Can you see it, Dan? Because you know what? I don't have myself on the screen. Let me
I
just
mean,
show this one picture here while I do this. You're going to put them up.
it's a bit blurry, but yeah, we'll get the
Okay, but
picture.
that's what it looks like anyway. So
Yeah.
there's 8 cards, including the Pikachu SWSH 153 card. There's an Ice Rider Karma. He's going to put this a Calyrex card that's really textured full art. It's a beautiful little set. What I want to tell you is that I am doing this set at $25, including it's $20 plus a one-time shipping fee of $5 for all 8 cards. If you buy more sets, you can have the same one-time shipping charge. This is an interesting set because there are 3 Snowflake sets now. There's one from back in the day, the vintage set that goes for thousands and thousands of dollars, or maybe $1,000. The box is more. And then there's the 2022 and there's 2023. Dan, if you get a chance, put the 2022 box on there so they can see what it came in. And the 2023 cards are not holding up all that well in value. The box is down, but the 2022s are still holding the value. They're higher than my prices on eBay or anything. And if you want to collect something like this, if you said, hey, we're going to try to put together 3 Snowflake sets so we can keep this going year in and year out, this is a cool set. And I liken it to the McDonald's sets in that these cards, get there. It's a mini set, but it's very popular. And you can also use them to go as master variant sets, cards that go into the regular sets, but just have the Snowflake stamp on top of them. So
you can also, if you don't restrict yourself to English cards, you can put together 4 Snowflake sets because there was a German exclusive set, I think, just the year after the first one.
Oh, that's right. That's right. It wasn't. It was also in an advent calendar too, wasn't it, Dan?
Yeah, it was a Heart Gold, Soul Silver era Snowflake set that was only in German.
Okay. Yeah. So, anyways, we love them. They're very cool cards. The stamps are cool and they look cool in a binder. So, if you're interested, let me know. As always, unfortunately, for those that worry about it, you have to trust me. It's got to be a Zelle payment or PayPal, friends and family. But if we can help you out with that, for those that are on the lower end of the budget scheme, hopefully you can enjoy those cards. All right, Dan, that's it for Deal of the Podcast. I'm ready to do Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B.
It's time to play Trainer Deck A or Trainer Deck B.
All right, yeah, I suppose we're trying to rush through the podcast, but yeah, sure, let's stop for this nonsense. What do we got? It's a stupid either-or game that David's going to ask me questions that I don't care about, and the very last question is going to feed into our main cards of the podcast somehow. So, all right, David, let's get this over with.
Why do we give everything away? Where's the fun if you just give it all away? The last thing is going to lead into the card spot. Okay, that's fine, Dan. By the way, Dan does have to give an explanation for his choice. I want you guys to know the rules.
Do I this time? Okay.
No,
I do this time?
No,
okay.
You don't. But he only has 10 seconds to make a difference. I'm not going to give him all 10 today because we're in a rush. And if he doesn't give an explanation or it's a poor one, then he will be banned from going to Worlds in Hawaii in August of this year. Dan, doing the laundry or doing the dishes?
Dishes. It's quicker. We have a dishwasher, and they don't need folded afterwards, which the laundry does.
So, Dan, you don't have to pre-rinse the dishes before they go in the dishwasher. Are you using one of those high-end dishwashing liquids that's supposed to clear it all off without you even touching it?
We pre-rinse them, but pre-rinsing the dishes is a lot quicker than folding the laundry.
And you don't care the fact that the laundry's really clean and the dishes are dirty?
No, not really. It just takes a long time to fold the laundry.
And Dan, when the dishes are done, you don't have to put them away, which is sort of like folding the laundry?
I do, but that's still a lot quicker.
Dan, an aisle seat or a window seat?
Window seat. So that people don't bother me when they're getting up.
All right, I'm on your page, buddy. Wireless or wired headphones?
Wired.
Can you tell me why wired? Because I read an article this week that said wired headphones are back in fashion and vogue again. What's up with that?
Well, the reason I have these is because I have to have vented headphones because I have problems with my ear canals. My ear canals go the wrong way. So these have they have holes in them so that air can get through. Because if I have headphones on that create a vacuum over your ear, I get intense ear pain. So I haven't seen a good set of wireless vented headphones.
Okay, somebody give me a comment and tell me why wired headphones are back in vogue again. And Dan, most of your life goes the wrong way. It's just not your ear canals. Dan, question or answer?
Answer, because that's what I'm doing. You're
yeah,
asking
but that's Dan. You should be more quizzical about things. It'll make you a better person. Dan, compulsory or mandatory?
Same thing.
So you're not going to pick one?
No, they're exactly the same. They mean exactly the same
Dan, you
thing.
must pick an answer. It's
All right,
mandatory part of the game.
all right, compulsory then.
Dan, spiders or snakes?
Snakes. Hate spiders. Love snakes.
Okay, Dan, I hate both, just so you know. And I hate spiders way more than I hate snakes. Dan, plane, train, or automobile?
Plane. I just enjoy doing far travel, and I can just sit down. You get your little TV. Don't have to worry about it.
Dan, every plane ride you've ever taken with your wife, is she always mapping out what's going to happen when you get there?
She might be. I put my headphones on and I watch TV,
All right.
so I don't know.
Dan, lackluster or blockbuster?
Lackluster, just like this section.
Dan, blueberries or strawberries?
Strawberries, I guess. I don't like anything blueberry related. Strawberries, I don't really like eating it. Just strawberries on their own, but I like strawberry flavored stuff, so I'll go with that.
Okay, Dan, that was the wrong choice. You usually don't make a wrong choice. In this case, you actually made the wrong choice. Dan, there were two significant articles that came out this week that said blueberries are the key to everything that is healthful in life. Every benefit from antioxidants to living longer to better eyesight to better relationships to more money is now linked to blueberries. So you can't eat too many; they'll hurt your gut. But get a handful in every day, Dan, and I think I could see your life changing for the better. Dan, hyperbole or alliteration?
Alliteration. It's more fun.
All right.
Yep.
Dan, you're lucky we're in a rush because I just want to alliterate the heck out of you right now. Dan, trash or recycle bin?
Recycle bin. It's good to recycle. And generally, the recycling doesn't smell anywhere near as bad as the trash does.
Yeah, that's definitely a good answer. Dan, virtual or augmented?
Virtual, I guess.
A very confident answer.
Yeah, not sure on that one, but sure.
Dan, have you ever used those Oculus type glasses you put on your face that take you to a different world?
No, because I don't know if they would work with my regular glasses. It's like when you go to see 3D movies at the cinema, I have to have the 3D glasses over my regular glasses, and they all sit weird.
Yeah, I struggled with that for a long time, which is why they make LASIK surgery, which is the greatest thing since sliced bread if you don't want to wear glasses, until it wears off at about the age of 62. And now I had to memorize this whole list, Dan, because I can't actually read anything on the screen. Dan, unknown, A, B, C, or D?
D. D for Dan.
What is unknown, Dan? What the heck is an unknown card? What is an unknown?
Unknown. It's a Pokemon, and there are 28 different forms, one for each letter of the alphabet, plus the exclamation mark and the question mark. And it was within the Pokemon lore. It was like an ancient form of writing. You see it you got like the ruined places around Johto and stuff, and around Hoenn, and you see unknowns written on the wall.
The stuff you know. I can't imagine how you fit anything else up in that brain. Dan, Empoleon, Infernape, or Torterra level X? All of them level X's.
I like the Empoleon because the Empoleon level X has an interesting error version as well as having its regular version.
All right, I'm sure you'll turn us into that in a minute. Rapidash or Slow Stroll?
Rapidash.
Why are you in such a hurry all the time, Dan? You don't like take a slow stroll?
Because we've been recording for an hour and 15 minutes and we're still in Trainer Deck A or B.
Dan, by the way, Laura needs to draw. Per ugly or bark pretty?
Per ugly.
It's funny how you always go for the ugly stuff. Speaking of which, you're a handsome man, but dye that darn hair or decide you're never going pink again.
I'm going to dye it before we come out and visit you. I'm going to get a haircut and get it dyed.
That's great. Thanks for doing that for me. I mean, I know Vegas people are crazy, but I don't know if they can handle you. Dan,
I'm going to get all my hair dye leaking out in your swimming pool.
That's
going to turn your pool pink.
That's great. That's just great. We may move slightly before you get here. Dan, why not or just cuz?
Why not? It's great, hilarious Pokemon.
Rapidash, Dan, or grab some cash?
Grab some cash. I could use some cash right now.
Meditate, or Metalose?
Meditate.
You have no creativity, man. All you know is what you know. You need to open your horizons and find a new world to live in. Energy Restore or Energy Switch?
Energy Switch. I think it's more of a classic card. I think it's been around longer than Energy Restore.
Dan, Bidoof, 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 or Bidoof?
Bidoof.
Dan, helmet or pads?
Helmet. What was that one in relation to?
I don't know.
Anything?
Protective gear you might wear if you were going out snowboarding or you were going out skateboarding or something with a boarding.
Okay.
But I don't
Helmet,
think
then.
you're very hard headed, buddy. I don't think you need a helmet. I think you need pads.
What I need is a helmet with a chin strap because when I was younger, I smashed my chin open multiple times as a child.
Right. Dan, diamonds or pearls?
Diamonds.
All right. I hope that Laura agrees. It's critically important to get that one right. You're going to make a big mistake. Dan, what do you think we're going to talk about this week in highlighted cards?
Probably diamond and pearl.
Nice job, buddy.
And now for our highlighted cards of the week.
All right, so what we're looking at today in highlighted cards is the Diamond and Pearl base set. So, David, this was your pick, so why don't you start off by telling us why you chose this one to look at this week?
I never know why I choose anything, Dan, so that's not a valid question. Let's put that one aside, and let's just talk about some things about it. It certainly is an interesting set where it seems like a lot of changes were made, both in the cards and the gameplay and all that kind of stuff. So we know that this is the first main expansion of the Diamond and Pearl series, and it was released in May of 2007. It introduced the Level X cards, okay? Maybe you can talk about those level up Pokemon. I guess you can use. Can you talk about that? Kind of what that meant?
Yeah. So Level X was it was sort of the chase cards of that generation. In the same way, we had the EXs in Generation 3, and then obviously later in Generation 3 they added the Gold Stars. Later on in Diamond and Pearl, they started adding shiny Pokemon and other secret rares. But to start off with, we had the Level X's, and Level X's were, instead of just being a different type of the same Pokemon, your Pokemon actually evolved into the Level X. So you mentioned, Empoleon Level X, you start out with, you have to have an Empoleon in play, and then you evolve Empoleon into Empoleon Level X, rather than evolving Prinplup directly into a Level X.
Okay, interesting. So let me read some of this. This stuff's really interesting to me because again, you're going back a ways. I mean, it's really unbelievable to think about this. This is 17 years ago. Okay. So it says poison type Pokemon changed from being represented by the grass type to the psychic type. Supporter and stadium cards were separate class of cards rather than the subclass of trainer cards. Both Darkness Energy and Metal Energy received new basic energy forms, which were free from the 4 per deck rule. Yep. And cards that were allow players to search for a Darkness or Metal Energy card may seek out either version. And then it says they had an updated card design, numerous changes, level returned and appeared on the right of the Pokemon's name. The word HP was smaller and appeared before the amount. Evolution box moved to below the Pokemon's name. Pokemon's Pokédex number, species, height, and weight were displayed below the artwork window. Circles on the left of the card no longer appeared. Pokédex entry made its return and was located below the Pokemon power and attack box. Illustrator's name was moved above the retreat cost. So a lot of different changes.
A lot of aesthetic changes and a lot of gameplay changes, yeah.
Yes. And then this was interesting. The reverse foils were no longer being holofoil on the background of the artwork. Instead, it was holofoil on the entire card, excluding the artwork, right?
Yeah.
And then each booster pack was increased from 9 cards to 10, and they included 5 common, 3 uncommon, 1 reverse, and 1 rare or rare holo card. All right. I'm going to stop right now. Stop what you're doing. Listen intently. It's drawing time. So, oh no, I didn't. Oh yes, I did. Character this week, Empoleon, depending on if it's Dan. Empoleon, if you're from the UK and you're looking for some Yorkshire pudding to drip on your Empoleon. The number is 4. Empoleon number 4. Get to my DMs, make a new friend. I need new friends because I'm not allowed to swipe. All right, Dan, is that, and then leave a comment on the video. And also, if you share, you get an additional entry into the drawing.
Cool.
Okay, couple things I just wanted to list out about the set: 17 regular hollows, 110 non-hollow cards, 4 silver border level X cards, hollow cards, Empoleon, the okay, I don't know, I know what they are, but I'm not going to read them. So, okay, and then 31 master set variant cards and the 119 reverse
did you
hollow
say
cards.
did you say 4 level X's?
If I did, then I might have included the one the
Empoleon variant.
yes, I could have.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's 3 with the Empoleon then having an error version as well.
Okay, so I'm gonna have you talk about that error version in a minute, but 31 master set variant cards and 119 reverse hollows. The reverse hollows don't count because you're not allowed to count any reverse hollows in a set. What? Reverse hollows are the best part of a set. The fact that nobody counts them as part of their set, nobody thinks they're part of a master set, folks have gone crazy. They've gone completely bananas. By the way, I looked out on the internet to see what a box of this stuff is selling for. I couldn't find one. I don't know if I just didn't make a good search, but I couldn't find one. So it wouldn't surprise me if a Diamond and Pearl base set booster box is way more expensive than I think it used to be. When I thought it was like $1,500, $2,000, it could be a lot more now, just to say the least. It could be $5,000, $6,000. I don't even know. So Dan, will you talk about the variants in this set, please?
Yeah, so I'll start off with that error version that we talked about, the 1 error card. The Empoleon level X, it is supposed to have a Poke Power, but the early prints of the card had the Poke Body logo instead of the Poke Power, and then later prints corrected it to Poke Power. So that's the 1 corrected error that appears within the set. Variants, there are a lot of them because in addition to the set having a lot of aesthetic changes and a lot of playing differences that existed within the game, this was a huge turning point for collecting in terms of these set variants, because this was when we started getting staff promos for basically all events. Because in the EX era, we talked about it, the only times you got staff promos were Nationals and Worlds. Cities, states, pre-release, regionals, none of that stuff had staff promos for the EX era. Then when we hit the Diamond and Pearl era, they decided to start doing staff variants for all of these other cards as well. So that's where we're filling out actually quite a lot of the variants, why we're hitting so many variants within this, this whole era, and I guess even now to modern day, is because of that change. And the competitive season that came out to the 07 to 08 competitive season, a lot of it drew directly from Diamond and Pearl base set for its cards. So you had the Shinx, Luxio, Luxray line. That was your cities, your states, your nationals. Those had the regular versions and the staff versions. Luxio was also the pre-release card, so you've got your regular version. And again, your first ever staff pre-release card is from this set. That's your Luxio. You have, what am I looking at here? Regionals. You have your Regionals Electivire, and obviously staff promo for that one again. So we're hitting a lot of tournament promos within this set. Then we talked a little bit about Snowflake promos earlier. That first set of Snowflake promos covered a few different sets. I think it was Diamond Pearl, Mysterious Treasures, Secret Wonders, maybe Great Encounters, I forget. But there are a few of those from the Diamond and Pearl set. Looks like we had 4 of them within this set. It's the Riolu, Glameow, Skorupi, and Stunky from that advent calendar. They were variants for this Diamond and Pearl set. Dave, do you want me to stop at any point so you can jump in with any questions? I just want me to get through all of these variants, and then you can ask questions at the end.
Yeah, no, you can go through. I think it's just so interesting. There's just a huge amount, 31 additional cards if you really wanted to complete a master set. Go ahead.
We then have 10 cards from the original Burger King collection. The Burger King collections where they came with kids' meals. You got one of, I think it was only 12 cards total, and then we have 10 of them in this set. They were reverse holo cards with the Diamond and Pearl logo in the bottom of the card. There was then a later run of platinum cards the next year or 2 years later.
Let me stop. Let me stop you there just for 1 sec, Dan. So it's interesting. The Burger King cards didn't have Burger King logos on them at all. They just had, as Dan said, the kind of a Diamond and Pearl logo on them. You had to know they were from the Burger King set. you some people, because we are a collecting podcast. I don't know why. Why are we collecting podcasts? We should be a podcast where people just are. It should be a fall asleep, a bedtime. You know the sleep app that you can put on that gives you white noise. This is like white noise. It's just even more noisy.
Yeah.
So basically, you could be collecting the Burger King sets through all the years, the McDonald's sets or whatever. You could have a binder full of those. Or you could then separate out the Burger King set into these other types of sets if you were making master set with the variants included. That's what I do. That's what Dan pretty much does. But it's interesting. I look at this many different ways, from smaller subsets like your Snowflake, like your Burger King, McDonald's, your Trick or Treats from the newer Trick or Treat sets. All of those things could be separate little sets, or you could enter them into your bigger sets with the variant stamps on whatever regular set art is in there.
Yeah, it's one of those ones where you would have to know exactly what it is to try and put the full set together, because if you're looking at the set logo and stuff, you're just looking at the original set. So I'll very quickly say what those 10 cards were. We got Lucario, Manaphy, Pachirisu, Grottle, Monferno, Prinplup, Chimchar, Piplup, Shinx, and Turtwig. Next, there were 3 foil versions of the original starters of Turtwig, Chimchar, Piplup. Just Cosmos foil versions of the common cards. You get those. There was a few different ways to get them. There were in tins and blisters. A couple of different ways to get those. They're pretty easy to find. We also have 2 different versions of Professor Rowan. So one is a Cosmos foil version of what's previously a non-foil card that comes in a Diamond and Pearl collection. This one was released quite a few years after the set, I believe, because it was some sort of collection that I think had 1 pack from every Diamond and Pearl set, and then came with a few different foil cards in it. So that one was one of the later additions to the Master Set variants. And then we also have a Professor Program, Professor Rowan, so it has the logo of the Professor Program actually on the card. And then we hit the 2 most interesting and rare variants from the set, looking at the Piplup and Turtwig distributor promos. So this is a Piplup, which has a logo saying San Diego 07, and Turtwig, which says New York 08. So these were actually created for Pokemon USA's distributor meetings. So when Pokemon met up with its distributors, the people who get the cards to be able to send them out to stores, they had this special promo made up for those distributors to be handed out at that meeting. There's been talk of how many copies were possibly out there. Obviously, people from Pokemon have talked about the card very briefly, although sadly they won't anymore. And after what we've seen people go through when they talk about stuff, I don't blame them. But they obviously would not commit to saying how many copies were made. But they don't change hands very often. There's just a handful of them out there. There was these 2 from this set. There is a further one, which is a Munchlax from Rising Rivals. I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point. That one says, I believe it's Chicago 09, I think, is on that one. But those are, if you're looking to try and do a full, complete, true master set, everything included of Diamond and Pearl, those are going to be the 2 most difficult ones to get. I know they do kind of fall into that weird gray area of, do you count it as an official release? Because, we talk obviously a ton about the pre-release Raichu. There was definitely no official release of the pre-release Raichu, despite it being, a real card that originated from within Pokemon. This one is more of a gray area. It's closer to having an official release because of the fact that we know it was given out at that distributor meeting. I will say when these first showed up, people originally thought they were Comic-Con related. Even the first person who was trying to sell one thought it was Comic-Con related because of which cities were printed on it. But then it was someone from Pokemon, someone from what is now TPCI, confirmed that they were from a distributor meeting. So that's how we know the history on these. So the fact that it's a distributor meeting, as I say, it's sort of an official release, but also sort of isn't. So I guess I can definitely see why some people would be okay filling out their set without these ones, because there was no public release, at least we'll say. Anything else to say on that one, David? Obviously, you do have these cards. Anything else to add?
I have these cards?
Of course you do.
Oh, yeah. That is such a relief. I was listening thinking I didn't have them. Thanks, Dan. Yeah. Dan, I think that what's interesting when you say official release, folks should understand it's not a quantity thing, right? It's not a quantity of how many are out there, because like we talked about the Katy Perry card or whatever the other card is that are out there, that might be one of one, but that was an official release. So it's not a quantity thing. The you know, I agree with you, somewhat of a gray area, but I guess from what we've been told and everything, there's clearly a few of these, not many. Certainly, you can always tell by what comes to market or doesn't at some point. We can never account by a TPCI or a Wizards of the Coast or a or a Pokemon company employee that's got 27 tucked away, but we're not aware of that.
Right.
So I would say it's an official release. A more curiosity wise for me is I wonder, I've never thought about this. Are there any out there that have been graded? I don't know that answer. And we won't spend the time in the moment to go through, because you might have to look for many different searches to actually figure out if one was out there. But
I will say I don't believe any have been graded, at least by a big name company. I know that PSA won't touch them because of people that are in PSA's ear telling them not to touch them.
okay.
Beckett's I also don't believe have graded any, and CGC I don't know of any. I feel like if Beckett or CGC ever graded any, it would be talked about. I think like CGC did with the Raichu, I think there would be an article about it, and I think we would have seen it if they'd graded any. So I don't believe any have been graded by any company.
I think Beckett will grade them as long as it comes back as a black label. So it's just a matter at that point of the condition. Dan, I kid. I'm a kidder. Yeah, so a lot going on in this set. I'll give my closing comments. You can say if you have any or not. What I want to tell you guys is, I'm so fortunate to have a binder that I can flip these pages and see this entire set with all of its variants and everything. But whenever you look at your sets, it's sort of important, I think, to really appreciate the transitions. Like, we all are going to say we like EX era better or whatever, and so those cards are amazing, and the silver cards at the end and the gold stars are all fantastic. But this was such a major transition, both in card appearance, in the gameplay. There was kind of complete wholesale changes. And so it's a little bit, if you go from one to the next, it looks very different. The reverse hollows, it's all very different, but it's very special. And I think that's what I love about it is it's a very special set in that it's the first of the next era, and it is completely different than anything had come before it. So I really like the set a lot.
Yeah, I definitely really like how it looks, and this was a set that came out just a little bit before I started collecting, and it probably only been out about a year when I started collecting, so it was still in stores. So this was a set I do remember, picking up packs of while I was just out and about, and I have a decent amount of this main set put together, and I'm only missing a few variants, but I'm actually just missing a ton of reverses from this set because, as it is with a lot of the Diamond and Pearl era, actually, you finish the main set way before you finish reverses. I mean, now that's obviously not the case because every set has 150 secret rares in it. But back then, your level X's, you were getting 1 or 2 level X's per box. So you were maybe finishing the main set with about 2 boxes worth of packs. But to get all of the reverses, you'd need about 4 boxes worth with no duplicates, So there's a lot of the Diamond and Pearl era where my sets like that. I know a lot of other casual collectors have a similar sort of thing where they were finishing out the main sets, and then it's the reverse hollows where they're missing a few things.
Well, the good news is nobody counts a reverse hollow, so your set's probably complete as it stands, Dan. Congratulations. And let's throw out 79 or whatever I said. No, I'm sorry. Let's throw out 119 reverse hollows that you don't need to make a full set because no one cares about them. Okay.
Well, I think I'm going to more focus on the variants. I think Diamond and Pearl era as a whole, I'm not missing too many variants. I think this set, not counting those 2 distributor promos, which I've kind of already shelved those on my. I know I would count them as part of a master set, but I don't see myself getting them anytime soon because of availability and because of what they would cost if they did come to market. So other than those, I'm only missing 4 variants from Diamond and Pearl as a set. So I may just go in and just finish those off pretty soon because it's not going to cost me too much to do that. And it would be a cool set to finish the variants for.
So, and let me tell you a little secret. I know a friend of mine who, depending on if we could get him on a good day, he's in the UK and his name starts with M and ends with Addy. If, you might be able to convince him to pop his distributor promos your direction. So that would cost you some money, but that's okay. It might be worth it. We'll see. So,
I mean, it would be the money. The money would be the issue
I
more
know.
than the availability, I think. But
I think you could budget that out a little bit to just finish one set. So.
yeah, I mean, to be honest, if I end up getting the two, I'd have to try and get the Munchlax as well.
Yeah.
I would have to try and get the set of 3 if I was going to do that. But
yeah.
All right. Yeah, I think it's a very, very cool set. I do really like the Diamond and Pearl era. I've got a lot of nostalgia for the Diamond and Pearl era because it is when I first started collecting. So very, very nice set. Very cool set.
I'm going to ask you one last question. I know, and you can't look it up, so you just yes or no, give me your best guess. The Empoleon, the regular one with the red Poke Power label or the green Poke Body label. There's, each one, too. Do you feel like one is more rare than the other?
I've always felt that they were pretty equal.
Okay.
I've never seen it where, I guess I haven't looked at them in a long time or looked at the Diamond and Pearl prices in a long time for the actual main set, but I always remember whenever I was seeing them, they were going for about similar amounts of money, and it never seemed like one was always available and the other wasn't. It seemed like they were always both there if they were available.
All right. We talk a lot about this idea of being able to do mini sets, mini collections, because of the budgetary point of going back and how much this stuff costs. So what a great way to start out. Maybe you skip the EX era because they're expensive, or you just do the silver borders of the EX era, not the gold stars. But then you move into the Diamond and Pearl era, and you look at the Diamond and Pearl base set where you've got 3 cards you need to collect, or maybe a 4th because of an error. And all of a sudden you have all those silver bordered hollow cards. And now you move to the second set, whatever it might be, Mysterious Treasures or whatever it is. I have no idea.
Mysterious Treasures, yeah.
So that's just there's little ideas that you can put together that might not kill you budget-wise to build a really nice binder page or graded, if you like, collection. So.
Yeah, I think for graded ones, I think graded level X's in a 10 are very, very expensive because not that many people have graded level X's when you compare it to, all the hollows from the old sets and the EXs and the gold stars. There's a lot of level X's which will go toe to toe with EXs in PSA 10 prices, but with level X's, it's because of that low population. I think most of the level X's are probably in low double digits PSA 10 copies, just because of the fact that not as many people were collecting them or grading them, especially before the pandemic, back before PSA shut down for a while, and I think they're still trying to deal with the backlog from that. And I think there's just a way, way fewer copies out there in PSA 10. So a PSA 10 collection is going to run you a lot of money, but a raw collection of level X's looks really sweet together. And yeah, there really aren't that many of them. And only a couple of Charizards that might set you back a little bit of money. Most of them are relatively affordable.
And we're not going to get into grading today. We could do a whole podcast on that, and we may as well at some point here pretty soon, is what's going on in the hobby and all the controversy. But all I'll say is you probably have so many people right now, especially newer collectors. I'm not going to say the ones that have a vested interest in suggesting that you should grade or suggesting that you should grade with CGC or PSA or whatever other Beckett, anybody. But what I will say is that there is enough controversy over grading at the moment that I think a lot of you should consider not even worried about grading. You can always grade at any time. It doesn't have to be today. If it's going to be for your collection, it could be today, a month from now, 2 years from now, or 5 years from now. There's going to be a grading company that you can submit your cards to. It's going to be AI, or it's not going to be AI, or it's going to be your 20-something, or it's not, or it's going to be your experts. You're still going to have to pay your fees and all the things you have to do, and you can get them graded. But with as much controversy as going on with every single grading card company right now, there's a lot of folks who just say, don't grade at all. Just put your cards away, get the best condition you can, and deal with it when all of this stuff settles down to where you actually know a 10 is a 10 and a 9 is a 9, and every company is legitimately doing what they're supposed to be doing. So, again,
the thing is, as well, with the PSA 10s having that huge premium because there's so few of them, it also means if you send your cards into PSA and they come back as a 10, you've suddenly got a huge upcharge from PSA. Because if you're looking at like the 9s are $100-$200, but suddenly people are paying thousands for the 10s, if your card comes back as a 10, it's now in that like higher tier of grading category, and you have to pay a ton more to PSA to even get your card back. So it's always something to keep in mind.
Dan, I could do a rant. My rant today is not going to be a rant. It's going to be a plea, a more of an informative thing, I hope. So, but I'd still like to do it. Want to cue that up?
Sure.
Oh, good. David has a rant coming on.
All right, guys. So today I'm going to talk about something that's near and dear to me. I kind of allude to it a lot, but I've never really laid it out specifically, which is how are you guys using your phone? Your phone, this thing right here. How do you guys use it? Are you doing mindless scrolling, watching the lives of your friends, gambling, whether real or fantasy, checking out restaurants and food fantasies every day like Dan? If you're the few women that watch us, are you looking at, turning it to yourself in your face and seeing if you have an extra blemish or something out there that you shouldn't have? That's not what the phone should be used for, okay? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love cats, watching cats fall off things as much as the next person. But you guys are truly missing an opportunity to leverage your phone and the technology available today for amazing benefits. So here's what I'm saying, and I hope you guys will listen for just a few minutes. This is not what it was like when I was a kid. If you needed to know anything when I was a kid, you had to open up a book, you had to open up a manual, you had to open up a map if you were driving somewhere, an encyclopedia, make a call to someone, phone a friend, right? Because it was very different as far as how that information was available, and certainly wasn't right there in your hand at all times. But I know both worlds, okay? I know how it was like in the past and how it is today. And I truly appreciate, because I know that, the opportunity in front of me every minute of every day. So on my phone, I want to give you an example of some articles that I've downloaded recently, okay? 3 ways to live more fully. Habits to make you happier, healthy, and more productive. 7 life lessons I'll rely on in 2024, like the importance of connection, collective effervescence, kindness contagion, gratitude being powerful, vulnerability is hard but worth it, silence speaks volumes, the idea of active listening. Do you know that on this phone you can get free happiness courses at Harvard, Yale, Berkeley, and North Carolina right now, completely free? There's articles on tech that will change your life in 2024. There are so many things you can do. Okay, let's talk about YouTube podcasts. I listen to the YouTube podcasts of the influencers in this hobby more and more just to see what they're about, to see if I can learn one pearl of wisdom. Some of them aren't worth your time. They aren't worth a minute of your time, but you'll figure that out because you're watching and you're learning and you're listening. Okay. And some of them are worth a lot of your time. There's people that talk about starting Pokemon NE. Okay. Again, I'm not speaking. I don't know Pokemon NE. I know that some of the stuff he does I like, some is okay, some is, whatever. Some of it's a little misleading, but he was, he talks a lot about talking about how to start a Pokemon card selling business. And he's got a series of videos out there. By the way, if he's charging you, forget it. But I'm assuming he's not. And so you watch and you learn and you take this stuff in and you pick up that pearl of wisdom. The YouTube videos that talk about how you start up. I used YouTube videos to start up how I was getting on social media and beginning my own business and setting up my own website. All of that for free. All of that on your phone when you're using it, okay? So here's what I suggest. Did you find things that interest you and you spend at least a few minutes every day? Have a few minutes every day researching, studying, learning, exploring, growing. Using your phone as this amazing body of information that you can access at your fingertips. I like to start with the news on my phone. Okay. So you guys know the news apps that come on, Apple has them or whatever. I think they could charge a lot. Like you can get 3 months free, but then it's like $13 a month. I don't do anything with money. I just find things that are interesting to me so that I can change and I can grow my brain. Okay. I can operate with a growth mindset and not stagnate in whatever. It keeps me young, keeps me learning, keeps me interesting. And what I mean by interesting is I can sit down with people and talk about any topic, which means that opens the doors to me and other people as far as friendships and topics and business opportunities and everything. Train your brain to move from intrigue, to intrigue, from wasting time and to making more time in the day. That's the idea. So I talked about starting businesses. I was watching something yesterday. It talked about actually starting you can start an Amazon business from taking inventory from Alibaba and moving it over to Amazon and you can make 10 times what it's being bought for over there. So these are all ideas, not going to fit all of you. Some of you are comfortable. Some of you want a side gig, but all of these things are possible when you open your mind and say, I'm not just going to sit here. We talk about this all the time. Take the extra step, open that sliding door to a bunch of other opportunities. All right. I lived in California for 60 years. We just moved here to Las Vegas, Nevada, the area about 2.5 years ago. Don't rob my house. I don't have any cards here. If you want to rob any house, rob Dan's. It's in somewhere in Columbus, Ohio. He has all of my cards. Okay, just want to put that out there for anybody interested. I have nothing. It's all in vaults or with Dan. So taking that extra step of coming to Nevada, it's less state tax. It's more entertainment. It's better weather on a consistent basis. It's less government oversight. It's just been so wonderful. Most people wouldn't do it, but we're always looking for an additional way to create happiness, create another opportunity, etc. So one extra step, I always say, one extra step. Become interesting, become someone who feels confident talking about anything, someone who others want to befriend. And I know that there's difficulties with a millennial attention span. So I'm not saying you review every piece of news. I'm just saying that you try to find things that interest you and you keep an open mind and read something. And sometimes it takes you down a path. I talked about finding something just like the blueberries article earlier, which is really interesting because when you get older, you start to struggle with lots of health things. Why wouldn't I try that? Why wouldn't I see if that's a harmless kind of thing with the studies and objective science behind it? So what do I do? Just so you guys know, I put articles that I save into my message chain and I then wait before I go to bed. Now, some of you can't do that. Some of you have the light issues and we got to turn off the phone an hour before bed. But I do recommend it's a great way to go to bed. You feel good. You feel like, hey, I read something that was interesting. My friends, my family, they don't take the time to do any of this. And you are gaining knowledge and stuff that then propels you into the next day with whatever ideas are coming. By the way, you have to be able to shut off those ideas. If you get too deep in the rabbit hole, then you're sitting there before bed going, I can't go to bed because this is so interesting. I got to do 3 more episodes of this course I'm taking through Harvard or whatever. So, but I'll end with this. I'll say, as I've said so many times before, success comes from not adapting the herd mentality and doing what everybody else is doing. It comes by being different. So my advice, guys, is strive to be different. In your hands, you have the most powerful tool for education you could ever have. And it goes with you everywhere. Use it to your advantage and be different. And it will make a big difference in your life. Thanks for listening.
Done. You good?
I'm good.
All right, let's very quickly get into some look what I found then.
What cards have our hosts found today?
All right, well, David, you sent me a picture of something. You had something cool pulled out, and we're running low on time, so tell me what you've got.
So, Dan, I sent you a couple of pictures of these cards that I found that are called Victory Medal cards. I think they're somewhere about 2011 or 12, if I mistake. If I tried to read what was on my screen in front of me, I can't read that small. One has a gold color and one has silver. And I know there's lots of different victory medals or battle stadium medals, all kinds of different stuff. But these two are really cool. And they have the Play Pokemon logos from the league on there. Can you talk about what these trainer cards are?
Yeah, so these were for winning Battle Roads. So Battle Roads used to be the smallest level of tournament within Pokemon. They're kind of the equivalent to League Challenges that we have now. And there would be 2 seasons of Battle Roads. So you'd have the autumn season and the spring season. And I think it was autumn seasons would give you a silver medal, and then spring seasons would give you a gold medal. For quite a few years, we just had the same Pikachu design with gold and silver, and it would just say, which year and which season it was from. Then in Hot Gold, Soul Silver, we finally got something a bit different. We got these 2 Typhlosions that you've shown me. It's very sad that they switched over to Victory Cups not long after this, because Japan actually has a ton of different victory medals with a lot of different Pokemon on them, a lot of different designs. It would have been really nice to get some more of those Pokemon and more of those designs over to English. Victory medals are actually some of the Japanese cards that I have a decent amount of, just because they have all of these different designs that we never got in English. But that's what they were. They were kind of like the lowest level of trophy card, because they were technically for winning a tournament. It just happened to be that the tournaments were very, very small that you had to run for. But like I say, after the year after the Typhlosion ones, they were replaced by Victory Cups, and Victory Cups had the gold, silver, bronze cup, and they had first place, second place, third place on them. So I think a lot of people thought that when they're looking at Victory Cups, feel like it's a first and second place card because it's a gold medal and a silver medal. It's not. It's actually for spring and autumn and spring seasons of Battle Roads.
I had no idea about that. I did think it was like a first and second place. So are you saying that these were the first ones? Were these, I know about the other ones, the Victory Cups and stuff. Were these the very first victory medals in the English language that came out?
So victory medals were the first kind of low end winners card for these type of tournaments, but the Typhlosion ones that you've shown, those were the last ones. Those were the last victory medals. They had the Pikachu going for years before it, and then there was the Typhlosions, and then they switched out.
So there's English Pikachu victory medals?
Yes, there's I think 4 or 5 different seasons of Pikachu. There's the gold and the silver one, but each one has 4 or 5 different ones with just the year and the spring or autumn or fall or summer or something on the. There's something on each one has a different logo. I'll have some pictures up on screen, but there's a few years of where it was just Pikachu gold and silver.
Dan, do you think when I ask you these completely inane, dumb questions that anybody actually thinks I have these cards in my collection? Because I certainly, if there are some Pikachus, I have them, and if there's victory medals afterwards or victory cups or battle stadiums, whatever, I have them all. I obviously just have no concept what I have. Correct, Dan?
Probably. I mean, the victory medals, it's easier to miss because at least with the victory cups were numbered Black Star promos. So if you didn't own any victory cups, there'd be a big gap in your set. And even though there's 4 different versions of victory cups with the same number, when you go to like Bulbapedia or whatever, it's listed there as the 4 different versions when you're looking at that set list. So you'd know about that, but the victory medals are completely unnumbered promos. They don't actually have any sort of set symbol. They're not variants from any set. They're not part of any Black Star promo set. They're completely unnumbered. So it's ones that a lot of people tend to just accidentally overlook.
Dan, last question about this. The Pikachus that you referred to prior to the Typhlosions, do they have numbers on the bottom?
No, they're also completely unnumbered.
Okay, so I'd have to have them if I have them, I have them in a promo binder, correct?
Most likely, yeah, they'll be in a promo binder somewhere. They ran from somewhere in the mid-EX era through the Diamond and Pearl era was the Pikachus, and then the Typhlosions were the Hot Gold, Soul Silver ones.
Okay. If I don't have those Pikachus, Dan, you're in a heap of trouble, buddy. I'm telling you, because going out and finding them now can't be easy. So, all right.
I'll pull all the binders out when I'm there. I know I have so much to check when I visit there. That'll be on my list.
All right. Good discussion, Dan. You got any TCG in the news this week?
I don't think so. I haven't seen anything pop up. So I think the fact that we're running a bit low on time. I have posted one video on my own channel about some of the Pokemon Center products this week. People should check those out, see why they shouldn't be ordering a certain Pokemon Center product. And I have some other openings coming up which people can look at, but it's kind of older products. But yeah, yeah, I know. I told you to order it. I'm sorry.
Yes.
Yeah, it's the
video. You can see why we love and hate the Pokemon Center more than life itself. And that's not what we ordered, but that's what we got. And let me go one step further. Take a look. You won't be able to see it, but if you could see it, you would see that this is completely crushed. The little box I bought, they don't package it all. They just throw it in. And I bought a booster box as well. And it was all, luckily, that was only a little bit crushed. This was more crushed. Luckily, it's only a $10 item. So thank goodness the Pokemon Center, the best customer service in the world, where you can get anything they want to send in any condition and you can't reach them or return anything in any way, shape, or form.
Yep, it's amazing. And what a note to end the podcast on. Hopefully you all enjoyed some of this, and hopefully we'll see you again for some more podcasts. Let us know if you want to be on the podcast, either as a full guest if we have a lot to talk about, or as one of those 15-minute guests. You can message Dave on his Instagram. You can message the podcast. I think it's Koffee Talks Podcast on Instagram. Everything's shown in the end screen, everything. So hopefully we hear from some of you soon.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Koffee Talks with Dan Norton and David Person. featuring music by More Than Never and artwork by Laura Norton. A special shout out to all of our Patreon members. Join us again next time.
But they don't want you to.